Dum 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 dum. This doesn't look good. Terra Luna Anchor Protocol yield reserves are dropping very, very quickly. Doesn't look sustainable. They've already dropped the APY. What's going to happen? What in the world should investors do? I'm going to be talking about that in this video. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is Crypto Wealth. Thank you so much for being here. I love cryptocurrency. I believe in the future of this technology, and I love earning passive income in cryptocurrency. If you love earning passive income, go down in the description. Subscribe to our Crypto Passive Profits newsletter. It's totally free. Put in your name, email, phone number, click submit, and enjoy the newsletter. All right, so today we're going to be talking about Anchor Protocol. What in the world is going on? Is this the end of Terra Luna's Anchor Protocol? Why is the APY dropping? What does this actually mean for the future of the protocol? And where do they, as a protocol, where do they go from here? Ladies and gentlemen, none of this is financial advice. I'm just a cryptocurrency enthusiast. I am biased because I believe in some of these projects and I believe this technology changes the world. I am not a financial advisor. So take what I say with a grain of salt. Use it as a starting point for your own research and then make your own opinions about your own financial well-being. That's why we're in crypto. We want to have control of our money, control of our wealth. This is pretty big news. The APY used to be 19%. Well, now it's dropped down to 18%. I think it was like 17.99 at one point. So there's a lot of speculation like, what does this mean? How's the market going to react? And why do they ever have an unsustainable APY in the first place? And how do they transition to a more sustainable model? The reason that they have these really high APYs is just to create attention, to attract people to the protocol. That's why they do it in the beginning. Now, what a lot of people I don't think understand is how difficult the transition is from an unsustainable model to a more sustainable model. This just shows a chart of the yield reserves. So the yield reserve alone paying out that, 18% is paying out about $6 to $7 million per day. And there's only about 200 million left. Now, several times the Luna Foundation has added funds here to this yield reserve, but you can't do that forever. I think the last time they added like $500 million. At the current rate, if they don't add any funds, it looks like within about 30 to 40 days, this entire yield thing is going to be out of funds. And then could it collapse? Is that going to happen? Oh no. Or might they add another $1 billion to the yield reserve, which I think could happen, and I'm going to show you why a little bit later in the video. I'm going to show you some circumstantial evidence that actually might be happening. Once it's clear that it was unsustainable, the question is, how do you transition to a more sustainable model? This proposal went up in March, and it was basically talking about a dynamic anchor earn rate, depending on how much money the protocol was making, because the protocol does make money. Somewhere it makes around a 9%, 10% APY. And they could pay that out, under 10%. It could pay that out indefinitely. But that tends to be, although it's aggressive, it tends to be in line with a lot of other stablecoin payout. So they've been using some of the Luna profits, if you will, to pay out that higher APY. Bitnate here suggested this dynamic anchor earn rate where periodically they just readjust the rate depending on how much money the protocol is making. And ideally, for now, they're going to adjust it down, and it wouldn't be a super drastic change. It would go down about 1 to 1.5% every month until we get to a place where the rate tends to be a lot more sustainable. The challenge is, if we get down to 10% APY, there's so many funds in Anchor. Is this going to be the end of Anchor? Will people still invest in Anchor? Will they still want to be here if they're only earning 11, 9, 10% interest, somewhere in there? What will happen? Especially because right now there's a lot of other platforms. Tron's coming out with their own platform, their own stable coin similar to Luna, and they're talking about paying out a 30% APY. Of course, that's not going to be sustainable, but in the beginning they can do it for a little while, and that can attract a lot of people who are chasing those higher APYs. Near Protocol is going to come out. They're reportedly going to have about a 20% APY. So what does this mean long term for the ecosystem? Well, first of all, I don't think this is the end of Anchor. Let me just get that out of the way. I don't think it's the end of Anchor. There's hundreds of projects being built on the Terra Luna ecosystem, so I don't think it's actually going to go anywhere. Could we see the ecosystem shrink a little bit based on TVL, total value locked into the ecosystem? Yes, I think it could shrink. But here's the thing I think people miss out on. There's a lot, and I mean a lot of resources. There's a lot of strong foundation. There's real business behind the Anchor protocol. The whole Terra Luna business model, is the actual Luna Guard and the Luna Foundation. I mean, there's a lot established here. This isn't just going to go away overnight. They're going to make a transition, and that's important to understand. So where does Anchor go from here? What does that transition look like? And let me just say this. I actually think a lower APY long term is positive. I mean, not only is it positive because, of course, you want to be sustainable. The Luna ecosystem, if there has been a challenge, it's like every time there's a new protocol that comes out, when you look at the protocol and you look at what you can earn on the protocol, a lot of times if you go look at the stables, it's like, why would I put funds here when I can earn that on Terra Luna? And what a lot of the protocols do is they don't even try to create their own APY earning mechanism. They just pull it directly from you stake your funds, say, on the Mars protocol or some other protocol like that, Astroport or something. And in many cases, all they do is then take your funds in the smart contract and stake it themselves on the Anchor protocol, because they can't compete with that. So being able to give these other protocols some attention, being in a place where Anchor doesn't just suck all the oxygen out of the room, I think long term that's a good thing for the ecosystem. I think it's a good thing for development. Should Anchor do from here? What are they going to do? Obviously, they're going to transition. But here's the problem. Being able to transition to a more sustainable, let's just say we get down to 9%, because I think that's the most sustainable. I think that's ultimately long term where we're probably going to go, but long term maybe several years, because they can take a while to get that low. When you talk about somebody wanting to earn 10% versus someone who's looking for the absolute highest APY on stable coins, a lot of people are yield chasers. And to think that how do we transition without losing a lot of the value in the system, I don't think that's realistic. So the assets are quite high. That drop in 18% hasn't really done anything. We haven't seen this big dip. I do think at some number we will see a dip. I just don't know exactly what that number is going to be right now. But I do think that we will see a dip at some point because, again, it's a different type of investor. Plenty of people yield farm because they're chasing high yields. Plenty of people stablecoin farm because they're chasing high yields. And people use Anchor Protocol because it was some of the highest yields. Those people are going to leave. No question about it. End of story. They're going to leave. But Anchor can still transition, and I think they're going to transition. There's a lot of interesting ideas like, this dynamic Anchor earn rate, where the idea being that it creates some use case for the Anchor token. The more Anchor tokens you get, your returns you get in pure UST. The less Anchor tokens you have, you get 75% UST and maybe 25% Anchor tokens, and you're able to get a much higher payout. There's also some numbers being crunched. What happens if they end up lowering the APR, let's say they get the APR down to 12%, and then they were to add funds back into the yield reserve, that it could go on for another year or 2 years. And all that's well and good and all that's fine, but at some point they have to hit sustainability. And so I think that they're going to get sustainable. I think the issue is, here's what we want to see. I think we want to see long term that the Terra ecosystems continues to develop outside of the Anchor protocol, because I think that's good for Anchor as well. If there are people inside the ecosystem, I think Anchor will always be one of the best yields you can get on your UST in all of DeFi. So I think as long as we can attract capital into other ecosystems outside, meaning other projects, Mars protocol, all those Nexus protocols, all those different protocols, as long as we can continue to attract capital in those protocols and create additional protocols that attracts capital, I think that too long term is going to be good for Anchor protocol. What do I think investors should do? This is not financial advice, but you have to ask yourself, hey, what kind of investor are you, and how bullish are you on the Terra Luna ecosystem as a whole? It's easy to be bullish when things are going your way, but during this uncertain time, how do you feel now about the future of the Terra Luna ecosystem? And I think that has a lot to do with what decisions you make with your investment. So personally, for me, I'm very optimistic on the platform, but it's not my sole investment. I hodl not the Anchor token, but I hodl the Luna token. I like to use UST, so that it doesn't change a lot for me personally, but I don't have all my eggs in this basket either. Let's just be clear with that. I think if you're yield chasing, then there's going to be other options on stablecoins soon. Tron is coming out with their USDD, so if you don't mind the Tron chain, you might go over there. If they roll out with 30% APY, if you're yield chasing, that's where you're going to go. If you don't like Tron and you want to get a little bit more, Near Protocol supposed to be rolling out their USD stablecoin soon, if it's not already out, and they're going to have the ability to earn over there. They're saying they're going to be able to have about a 20% APY. If you're just chasing stablecoin APYs, then maybe you go to one of those protocols, or maybe you split up between the two and maybe you still leave a little bit on Anchor. That is your call. But if you want to stick with an ecosystem that's more mature and has been first to market and has a lot of development and has been compliant with regulations along the way as well, I think there's a lot to be said with being able to stick with stability. In the world of crypto, nothing's super stable. But in the world of stable coins, and you're talking about ecosystems with development like this, I think the Terra Luna ecosystem, their continued development. There's AVAX collateral rolling up in here. There's, BETH has been here for a while. There's bonded Atom in here as well. So I think that's good. And I think we're going to continue to see more collateral options here in the Terra Luna ecosystem. Also, the only real question is, how do they supplement to earn? Can they supplement to earn? And do investors care? Investors may chase APY, but eventually most investors are going to want stability by and large, especially your large investors. They don't want to keep watching a protocol and shift every time that protocol shifts. So if they can get to a sustainable model that's in that 9%, 10% range, I think they'll attract a tremendous amount of capital long term, maybe even more capital than they have now. But keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, we also have a rocky crypto market right now. We have a rocky ecosystem in the financial sector as a whole and the economic sector. So there's a lot of uncertainty for all of these protocols by and large. I'm optimistic about the future of Anchor. I'm optimistic about the Terra Luna ecosystem. Let me know down in the comments, what are your thoughts? Are you concerned about the APY dropping? Do you care if the APY drops? I think the idea that you're going to keep all these investors who are just chasing APYs, I mean, that's an impossibility. There's a certain bit of a degen mentality that's always going to chase the highest APY. Every time I put up a video and I talk about an APY going up or a high APY project, it always gets a lot of views. People love that stuff, but at the same time, there's a place for stability. There's a place to store assets. I know for me, if I have USD denominated assets in crypto, I like to have them in UST. I don't mind putting them in Anchor as well. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on this protocol, and let me know your thoughts on Terra Luna as a whole. I definitely read as many of the comments as I can, and I will try to respond. One last thing, I almost forgot. There may be $1 billion coming into this yield reserve. You got to check this out. Shout out to Danku, by the way, who's a great YouTuber when it comes to Terra Luna. I mean, he's all over this space, is what he talks about all the time. In his video talking about this topic, he went into a lot more of the technicals and the data. I went into more of the philosophical approach from a business standpoint and the psychology of the market. But he posted this on Twitter. About 50 days are left in the Anchor protocol yield reserve. It might be reasonable to have another top up to facilitate a smooth implementation of the semi-dynamic anchor rate. How much? Well, if it happens, we might see a 10-figure number, 1 billion. Now that alone is not proof, but he got a response to his tweet.
And I've tweeted this out last week where I said, I think it maybe makes sense. You see here my typical chart and the tweet that maybe the number of $1 billion, which for Terraform Labs or the Luna Foundation Guard is a number which they would be able to handle if they want to refill again the anchor rate. It's totally up to them, right? They are a free foundation. They can do what they want. And I said 1 billion could be relevant to help to make the transition. And then the man himself, Danku, destroyed me saying, sounds low.
So Danku, if you don't know, so he's the CEO and he says sounds low. So it sounds like some pretty convincing circumstantial evidence that they may actually be putting in $1 billion or more into the yield reserve. So that could be incredible. By the way, I'll put Danku's video on the end screen so you can watch that as well. Thank you so much for watching. Decentralized cryptocurrency equals freedom. This is Crypto Wealth. I'm out.